back to the Narcissist Layer. I am your host, Hope J. I am the founder and president of the Center for Hope of Western New York. At the Center for Hope, we offer hope, help, and healing from narcissistic abuse. We are a nonprofit organization with a mission to provide legal advocacy, mental health support, financial advisement, holistic healing services, and education to help you down the path from victim to survivor. You can find out more about our services by visiting our website at centerforhopewny.org. Please follow us on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and LinkedIn at Center for Hope WNY for helpful information on recovery from narcissistic abuse. So today, I am very happy to welcome Gina Phillips to our podcast. Gina is the Center for Hope of Western New York Certified Divorce Financial Analyst. Welcome, Gina.
Thank you. I'm happy to be here, Hope.
Thank you so much. So I'm going to just introduce Gina. So Gina is, in 2017, Gina became a Certified Divorce Financial Analyst and founded Western New York Divorce Financial Advisors, LLC. Gina acts as a personal liaison between the client and their attorneys and or divorce mediators, breaking down the often overwhelming process into easily understandable steps. Gina empowers her clients in marital transition to be in control of their financial well-being, giving the clients the peace of mind and confidence that they need to make informed decisions about their future. I also think it's important just to say, I want to, and certainly we can talk about this more in depth, but you do say that you drew on your own personal experience after a lengthy and emotionally taxing divorce.
Yes.
So Gina, I think first of all, I want to ask you if you could describe for our listeners what exactly is a certified divorce financial analyst, number one, and number two, why were you attracted to, or why did you decide to go into this field?
Okay. Well, a certified divorce financial analyst is a special certification. It's almost like a certified financial planner, but all we do is focus on the assets and income and expenses related to the divorce process. It was overwhelming when I went through my divorce 14 years ago because it was during the financial crisis of 2008, and at the time I was a stay-at-home mom. So I didn't know what to do, where to turn, or anything, and I found out about this, and I wish I had one of me in my corner back then.
Yes.
And some of my friends too that went through the process, because we were just so overwhelmed with the whole filling out your financial affidavit and doing all the things related to it. Because you're so emotional. You're
Sure.
so worried.
Yeah.
Like, especially being a stay-at-home mom, how am I going to pay my bills? Is he going to take the money away? What about my kids? What about their future, their college, cars, and everything along the way? So when I found out about the certification from a friend of mine, I was like, okay, I have to research it. And basically, what you have to do is you have to take a specialized test, and then which now they've made one. It used to be 4 parts. Now they made a 1 4-hour test. So it's very attuned. You have to study. There's a lot of information involved. It's through the IDFA, Institute of Divorce Financial Advisors.
Okay.
And then every 2 years, you have to continue in education. So you have to get another 30 hours every 2 calendar years from the date of your certification to stay certified.
Okay.
So there's ethics involved, there's a lot of different things. So anyone who is a certified divorce financial analyst, you should be able to look up under us and see that we're active and that we're practicing, and there's no sanctions or anything unethical about our practice.
This is a very well-regulated field.
It is. Yeah. It's a newer field,
Right.
and that's the problem. A lot of people have never heard of it.
Right.
And don't know about this and how we can really help in the whole process.
Well, thank God you're here so that we can educate our listeners on why it is important to have a certified divorce financial analyst when you are preparing to start or commence a divorce, or if you've been served with divorce papers. So a little bit about your background. When we were talking earlier, you said that you have an accounting background?
Yes, I have an accounting degree, a BBA in accounting. I worked in various accounting fields. I was an internal auditor. I actually, before there was a tax checker for computers, I was one of those people that checked the taxes.
Right.
I was in charge of mortgages. I've done a lot of different things in my life. I had my own business.
Gina, that is so impressive, and I'm sure that so many people who are listening right now are thinking to themselves, "Wow, that is really impressive," and honestly, a little intimidating. I think especially for women, when we hear about people whose lives are kind of focused on numbers, right? That I think that sometimes is intimidating, particularly for women. And one of the things that I wanted to ask you is, why do you think that is? Why do you think that women, particularly, a lot of times, have some anxiety and or fear when they, about just understanding their own finances?
I think they just get overwhelmed with it. There's people that are good at certain things. Like I have one friend that's a great gardener, but if I bring up a number to her, she gets all like discombobulated. And me, when I'm stressed, I go balance my checkbook. I mean, that's just who I am.
Okay.
And I think a lot of it too is maybe how we were taught about it in our own family environment too.
Right.
I mean, because let's face it, back in the day, the women weren't doing the numbers.
Right.
Maybe your father did it. Maybe you went to your dad for money, and you didn't really understand it, and that was the way things were.
Right.
And I think it's so important that everybody knows their own numbers. That's what I always say.
Yeah.
I think that's very important.
Right.
And
even as before you partner up with somebody, before you get married and sign on the dotted line, it's very important to have those conversations about finances, isn't it, Gina?
Oh, absolutely. I think that even if you're going to live with somebody, you need to know what you're doing. And I know a lot of people come to me and say, oh, well, we had separate checking accounts and we had separate credit cards and we only put $1,000 a month together and paid all the bills. But if you're in a marriage, that doesn't matter.
Right.
Am I correct?
Yes, you are. Yes, we're going to talk about those issues and how I think a lot of people don't have misinterpreted or misunderstood the basics of what it means to be legally married and how your finances are intermingled even when you make your own decisions to keep them separate. So we can talk about that in a minute. But the thing that I wanted to get across today, to give you an opportunity to talk about, who you are, what you do, and why it's so important. Number one, I think it's, kind of amazing because you are a woman and you are a woman who's this sort of financial wizard person, right?
Well,
so I think that, but it's true because again, we were talking earlier, a lot of times when our clients are starting out the divorce process, and particularly our clients. Now, divorce is hard enough no matter what you're dealing with, right? But when you're dealing with somebody that's an abuser on the other side, it's significantly even more difficult for people. And a lot of times, we all know that part of the emotional abuse tactics that narcissists use in relationships is financial abuse.
Oh, absolutely.
Right?
And that's one of the things they say, oh, well, I know it better, so you don't need to worry about that, But I don't care where you are in your marriage. If it's good, if it's getting ugly, you should really have those conversations. I'm not saying every month if you can't do it, but at least quarterly or annually, you need to know all your accounts. You need to know your debts because you can be responsible for those debts too, even if one of them took it out. So you need to really understand what it is that you're taking in income and what you're paying out in expenses.
Gina, for the people who are listening right now, and they might be considering starting a divorce, or maybe they've been served with divorce papers, and they're not sure where to turn or what to do right now. What would you say to someone who has is thinking about starting out a divorce if they believe that they have been a victim of financial abuse and they don't have the information that
Right.
I mean, it's all well and good, like you're absolutely right, we should all know these things,
Right.
but when you've been in an abusive relationship, maybe you can explain to our listeners, first of all, what are some signs of financial abuse? Like, how do you know that you've been a victim of financial abuse, number one? And number two, if you are thinking about starting a divorce, or you've been served with divorce papers and you're in this terrible situation where you've been financially abused, what are some of what advice would you give a person, in that situation?
Right. And I know financial abuse can be very scary too. Maybe you're given an allowance. Okay.
Right.
Maybe your money goes into the bank and you're given just so many dollars a month to live on. And if you want to buy an extra piece of clothing or go to an extra trip, you got to ask permission. That's one of the signs.
There you go.
Or maybe you're starting to see collection notices, and you don't know that they've taken out debt or loans or different things in your name. So if you're contemplating this, first of all, you want to protect yourself. That's the most important thing.
Yeah.
If you're thinking about it, try to gather as much of the information as you can. If your names are on those accounts, you have every right to go to the bank and get that information.
Yeah.
If your social security and your name's on that account,
yeah.
Start doing research ahead of time.
Yeah.
Another time that I say is very good is when you're doing your taxes. Okay? And I know some people don't know the whole process, but even if you can take pictures, because one of the most important thing is the back where there's the interest in the dividends accounts, because those are important, or your investment accounts,
right.
or if they have a business, if you feel they're writing off too many things, those are the kind of places where you might find unethical
right.
or hidden
right.
things.
Now, some of this I think is, partially you have your own suspicions when you're in a relationship with somebody who's lying to you. For example, maybe they're having an affair, they're unfaithful, they're not home when they say they're supposed to be home. You're checking their cell phone, you're finding reasons to believe that they're lying to you. Financial abuse is part and parcel of this, right? Because if they're lying to you, it's almost like you're uncovering one thing after the other, and at the bottom of this well, you're going to find all of these, things where they have not only been dishonest in other areas of your relationship, but they have been incredibly dishonest in the financial area as well, right?
Absolutely. Okay, I had a client.
Yes.
She found a checking account book in her husband's golf bag.
Uh-huh.
Took a picture of it.
Yep.
He denied any money.
Yep.
Okay, guess what? She did tracing on it. In a matter of years, there was a lot of money that went in and out
That
of
they
that
were funneling, right, exactly.
They were funneled. They were
Yeah.
they were paying taxes on it, but they were taking commission checks.
Yeah.
And the wife didn't see it, and it was substantial. It was well, I can't remember the numbers. It was well over $100,000 in 3 years.
Okay.
Okay.
So that's a significant
that
amount,
could actually pay for a couple years your kid's education.
Right.
Do you know what I mean?
Right.
So,
and by the way, that's what we call wasteful dissipation of marital assets. Because, that's a very good example of somebody, if they're siphoning money off the top and not depositing it in the joint account, and if you're somebody who either doesn't have access because your husband's preventing you from having access, or simply is sort of deferring all of this to your partner, you're not going to know, when it comes time to have to plan, right?
Yeah.
Right.
And that's the most important thing. I think that if you're in a situation where it's hard for you to get money, that's tough. And I was fortunate that didn't happen to me, and that's why I really have a passion for helping women in these situations that really don't know. And I give them a document list of documents they might look for. I try to tell them, try to tell them, if you get so much in cash, cash is king, you know what I mean? Because your credit cards come in and hopefully you pay your credit cards off. Maybe you're using them more or less or whatever. Maybe instead of using the credit card, you're using a debit card. Do you know what I mean? Just different things like that. And I think the most important thing is you're educating yourself right now by listening to this podcast.
Yeah, right.
So take the next step and really understand. And if you have suspicions about something hidden, or you don't feel like what's on the taxes seem accurate, you can easily snap a picture of those things for the future. And that's the most important thing.
Right. Yes. I mean, in my practice, I find, there's definitely been situations where people have come in and we've started talking about finances and they get that deer in the headlights look. I'm sure you experienced that also.
Oh.
And it's when you try to take them through, the different sort of areas of things that they're going to have to pull information together in order to commence a divorce. And I have somebody saying to me, well, I don't know anything about that. I don't know where that is. I don't, particularly things like retirement. And that was something that you had mentioned, that make sure we talk about today.
Right.
Because people so often don't know anything about retirement assets. They don't know, I've had lots of people say, I don't know, not with respect to their own retirement, but with respect to their partner's retirement. A lot of times women are not in the workforce, as you mentioned.
Right.
They're stay-at-home moms, or they do this, what's it called, the sequencing thing, where they stay home for periods of years, so they're not accruing retirement. But in the meantime, your spouse is still accruing a ton of retirement. So what would you say to people that are listening about that?
Okay, well, one of the first things I say is that if you worked prior to the marriage, it's very important to see what you had at that point in time. So like if you have any of the statements, or you know how much you had at that time, because that is your separate property.
Right.
That is something that when we're going through all the numbers, you can separate out.
Right.
And that's can be really sometimes financially supportive, you know what I mean? Like, and to keep more of your own money. But just because you're a stay-at-home mom doesn't mean that you're not entitled to their pension if it's been a long-term marriage.
Right.
Basically, as long as you're married,
right, it's
and
from date of marriage to the date of commencement of the action, and you have a marital share, or it's part of your marital share to take a look at that time frame. Okay,
Right.
So. But really, I think that if you could give, somebody who's listening to this podcast today, if you could give them advice as far as maybe three things, or three things that they should be thinking about if they are thinking about commencing a divorce when it comes to finances, what would you tell them?
I would tell them to gather as many of their financial documents as they can.
Yep.
Make copies, take pictures, whatever they can as a means to do it. Kind of track their expenses.
Yeah.
Track the income and expense going in. If you have your own job, if you've got a part-time job or whatever, but what are the expenses going in and out of your checking account on a monthly basis? Is there something personally you can cut out to save on? And I think the third thing is make a list of your priorities, because you really need to know what's important.
Yeah.
Is it really important for you to stay in that house, or are your kids 17 and you're really worried about them paying for college?
Yeah.
Or is it that you just don't want the memories of the house, so you want to get out?
Right.
Or is it that you're about to retire and you just don't want any responsibility and you just want to travel the world?
Yeah.
But only you can list those priorities.
Sure.
And I always say to make a list of those and put them aside, and then look at them again in 2 weeks. Because when you're in an emotional state, are they truly your priorities?
Yeah, no, that's very, very true. And I think that's an important point, is that people's perspective is definitely skewed when you're, leading with emotion. What do you think is the most important thing that a certified divorce financial analyst can do for someone? Maybe how you would work in conjunction, like with an attorney, or complement what an attorney does, or what is it that you do that is different than what an attorney does?
Well, what I do is I look at the bottom line numbers. I help you gather all those documents and put them on that 23-page net worth statement.
Yes, the financial affidavit.
The financial affidavit that Hope will hand you on your first day. Here it is. And you're like, what is that? Even I said that,
Right.
And I mean, it asks you everything. It asks you all your assets, liabilities, income, and expenses. And like you said, when there's women especially, that don't know where to gather those documents, I help guide you. So I can help you do that. So if somebody comes to me and says to me, hey, wait, you didn't put anything down for birthdays. You didn't put down this. You didn't put down that.
That's right.
Because we don't want you to underestimate your living expenses.
Right.
Because you need a true picture. You need a budget. And that's what I can help you do too, is a budget.
And you help walk people. It's almost like you hold their hand. An attorney, probably most attorneys are not going to have the time to do that, to help people, to walk them through how to complete this. But you will sit down with people and help them, through this very intimidating process.
Right, and that's my forte. And I know it. And my divorce took 3.5 years.
Yeah.
I don't want anybody's divorce to take that long.
Right.
And
it's incredibly helpful for attorneys. Speaking as an attorney, we work together, for people that don't know, we work together quite a bit.
Right.
So
and sometimes, based upon what I've looked at on the taxes, I might ask questions.
Yes.
To tell the attorney.
You do. And you have. And it's been very, very helpful that sometimes you have pointed things out that, have caused me to take another look or a different look at the finances. So it is.
Right.
It's nice to have another pair of eyes.
Right.
And also, I think that you kind of pay attention to things sometimes that attorneys don't, because you're specifically focusing just on, we were talking earlier, about a pension payout and Social Security and things like that. You want to elaborate just quickly about those things?
Well, pensions you could still be entitled to. It
Yeah.
depends on the rules and everything. And then there's another form that you have to fill out, which a lot of people don't know.
But you actually have the software
Right,
to
right.
to project these things.
I can project to a point.
Yeah.
As long as I have good information going
Yeah.
in, I get good information going out. So we can kind of get a present day estimate of the pension, because it might not be, if you're in your 40s, you might want to keep the house. Like I know that New York State is an equitable state and we want it to be equal, but everybody has different priorities.
Sure.
And sometimes it's worth walking away from something and getting something else in return.
Yes.
And valuing it correctly, though.
Valuing it correctly.
That is very important, because the house value and a future pension are not the same.
Right.
And seeing the tax effect on all that stuff.
Yes.
And everything like that.
Yes.
But it's well and good that you say, oh, we're going to buy out the house, but she can't afford a mortgage. She won't qualify for a mortgage. Because a lot of times when you're going, which I work with other professionals like mortgage brokers or real estate agents, because you might need 6 months of your child support or maintenance.
Right.
It might not be like a snap of the fingers to you to
and I think having you kind of gain that out with somebody really helps significantly in the settlement process, because you help people kind of figure out those issues, because there's so many moving parts in a divorce.
100%.
And to be able to, I often tell people it would probably be helpful to sort of put it on a big like whiteboard, you know what I mean? And here are the assets, here are the debts, here, and we're wanting to move these things around. And that's kind of what you do.
Right. And it's funny you say that, because I have various worksheets that I utilize with people.
Right.
So I do have a document list. I do have charting your assets, priority list. I even have to-do lists, because people are so overwhelmed.
Yeah.
And I really think it does take a village. I think you need the cooperation of your attorney, someone like me.
Yeah.
Mental health,
or
a
divorce coach,
a divorce coach.
Yeah.
I mean, I see so much value added with a divorce coach.
Oh, so do I.
I mean, it's
wonderful.
It's wonderful. And there's different divorce coaches. There's divorce coaches like the one we have that helps you in the whole process. And then there's divorce coaches after, of how to move on or how to co-parent. And that's important too.
Sure.
Because it's important that you, in this whole financial thing, you don't bring your kids in the middle of it.
Yeah.
That's what I always said. And I always say it's hard. You have to think with your head and not your heart.
That's hard.
And that's extremely hard.
Yeah.
But if you don't do that now, you're going to regret it down the line.
Yes.
You're going to really regret it down the line.
I couldn't agree with you more.
And
so it's great. It's really great, I think, for our clients to have the guidance of people with this kind of experience, and sort of, the level-headedness of being able to reflect back to people, okay, this seems like you're making an emotional decision right now. Like you said, let's come back to this in 2 weeks.
Right.
And
And if you if you have a business, you got to go to a business evaluation person.
Yeah.
If you need those separate things, I know where I can help you, but I know where to refer you to the right professional so that you get the correct help you need. And I think that's very important.
Yes.
But another thing you brought up besides the pension was the Social Security.
Yes.
So if you were in a long-term marriage of over 10 years, you can be entitled to a portion of your former spouse's Social Security.
Yes.
So it's usually half. It's either yours or half of theirs, whatever is better. But it doesn't mean that as long as you don't remarry.
Right.
Right.
And can you just share the example that you shared with me before we started about the 6 months?
Oh, yeah. I had a friend of mine who was with her partner for a while. They got married.
Yeah.
He had been a retired police officer, so he had been collecting on his Social Security for a while. They got married at 59 and a half. And she could not collect on her former husband's Social Security, but if she would have waited till she was 60
if
or
she had come to see you,
she would have come to see me.
Right. But I bring this up because most of us going through life, we don't know these things, right? So we could make a pretty egregious sort of unintentional error on something like this.
Oh, absolutely.
Right, which is why, you know, when people come to me and hire me as an attorney, you know, I do, you know, I really push your services, because I really do think that it is important for them to have, you know, what you bring to the table as we are, you know, working through this process.
Right, and I think it's important
Yeah.
that when you do work with an attorney,
Yeah.
that it's the right attorney for you.
Yes.
Whatever you tell your attorney happened in your marriage, and
Yeah.
you have to be very comfortable with that.
Yes.
Infidelity, financial
Yeah.
abuse,
Yeah.
whatever it may be.
Yeah.
And if you don't feel comfortable relating all the good, the bad, and the ugly,
Yeah.
you're not going to get what you deserve
That's a good point.
in
Yeah.
the whole settlement process.
Yeah.
You're going to be afraid. If you're afraid of your attorney,
Yeah.
that's not going to work.
Oh, absolutely.
You
not.
have to
Yeah.
be able to communicate with your
And
attorney
trust.
and
Yeah.
trust and know that they have the experience. I feel that somebody that specializes in family law
Yeah.
is the way to go. I don't, you know, like somebody that does a lot of different
The
things.
general
you know,
practitioner,
No,
right,
no,
yeah,
no, no,
right.
no, no. I don't care how close of a friend they are to you.
That's a good point.
You know, I
Yeah.
have said that,
Yeah.
you know, and I think
Yeah.
it's important that when you go through this process, interview several different
Yeah.
lawyers,
Yeah. I tell people
CDFAs,
that all the time.
because
Yeah.
you have to feel
Yeah.
comfortable with them.
Yes. So in closing, you mentioned early on when I was asking you about your background about the IDFA,
Yes.
and you said that you're a member.
Right.
You know, anybody that's listening to the podcast and they're local, meaning, you know, we're out of Buffalo, New York. Everybody I think knows that Center for Hope of Western New York, where, you know, we service Buffalo and Rochester. But if anyone is listening and they're not local and couldn't necessarily maybe hire you, what can they find us?
Yes,
Like,
yes.
do they like you?
Yes,
Okay.
absolutely.
Okay.
They can look it up on the IDFA. It's divorce. Make sure it's not another acronym
Okay.
there. And they can plug in their address and look for somebody within like 25 miles or something like that. And all those people, like, you can click on them
Yeah.
and look them up and
Yeah.
look up their websites and feel comfortable that they're certified, they're keeping their education up, and they're there to help you in this field.
Yes.
Yes.
Well, I thank you so much for this very important information.
Right.
And, you know, I think that anybody that's listening to this podcast is going to benefit from following through with your advice. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
Okay.